Hello, I'm Sandra Mitrovich, and I'm the Women Man Killer Civic Engagement Fellow at the National Congress of American Indians. Welcome to our Civic Engagement webinar series. Today we will focus on the hard to count in our communities and how to reach them. We're so glad you joined us today and encourage you to watch for our webinar series. We try to hold them monthly, and they will focus on the importance of civic engagement in our tribal nations and feature a variety of topics and various guest speakers from time to time. I encourage you to join our listserv for announcements by emailing us at census@ncai.org. We also announce our webinars on our social media, civic engagement broadcast, and also list them on our website. If you missed any of our webinars, we'll be posting the recordings on our NCAI YouTube page and on our website, indiancountrycounts.org, under Events and Webinars. Here's an overview of today's agenda. I just provided a welcome. Our speaker today is Matt Johnson, Civic Engagement Associate from the National Congress of American Indians. Once Matt's done with the presentation, we will reserve time for questions at the end. Before we get started, I'm going to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's web event. This is a depiction of the GoToWebinar attendee interface, and it is made up of two parts: the viewer window on the left, which displays the presentations, and the control panel on the right. I'll quickly navigate how to use the control panel so you can readily participate in today's web event. By clicking the orange arrow, you can open and close your control panel. Here is where you will find all of the information about your audio connection. We recommend dialing in via phone rather than the computer, as it tends to limit feedback. To dial in, you will find the number and access code here, along with your unique audio PIN. As you can see, all attendees are currently muted in listen-only mode. At the end of the presentation, we will open for Q&A. At this time, if you want to submit any questions, write them in the questions pane. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded. After the event, you'll receive an email with a link to a short evaluation, and the recording will be available soon on our NCAI YouTube page and on our Indian Country Counts website next week. At this juncture, I'm happy to introduce Matt Johnson, Civic Engagement Associate.
Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate the introduction. Really quickly, I know most of you may already know this about NCAI and what we do here in Indian Country Counts, but for those who may not be that familiar, we're just going to do a quick overview of who we are and what we do. So as you can see on the screen here, the National Congress of American Indians was founded in 1944 and is the oldest, largest, and most representative American Indian and Alaska Native organization serving the broad interests of the tribal governments and communities. Indian Country Counts is NCAI's initiative to encourage all American Indians and Alaska Natives to complete the 2020 census. For those of you who don't know, what is civic engagement? Civic engagement means working to make a difference in the civic life of one's community and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. It means promoting the quality of life in community through both political and non-political processes. Just a quick review of the census form. I know that we had a previous presentation on it, but just for those who may have not been on it, the census form is only going to be 9 questions long. The picture here is of the first 4 questions. On question 1, the race of the person determines if the household is considered an American Indian Alaska Native household or not. So whomever is the first person to fill out the form, whatever race they mark, that household is determined to be a house of that particular race. On question 9, which is the race question, which you don't see up here, this is where you would enter in, or where you would identify yourself as American Indian Alaska Native, and then there is a space available to enter in the tribal name that you identify as. So you can contact your tribal partner specialist or the Intergovernmental Tribal Affairs Specialist. Her name is Dee Alexander, and you can see her email right here. It's d.a.alexander@census census.gov. You can contact her directly to confirm the correct name to enter in for your tribe. Finally, the importance of the census. The census is a powerful information source that significantly influences U.S. policy. It is the foundation of American democracy, determining the allocation of congressional seats and redistricting for the voting geography. And nearly $1 billion in annual federal resources are allocated to the country based on census data. Nationally, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that the American Indians and Alaska Natives living on reservations or in native villages were undercounted by approximately 4.9% in the 2010 census, more than double the undercount rate of the next closest population group. So as you can see, it's very important that we make sure folks actually get counted. Now, I know, as the title said, we mentioned what is hard to count. American Indian and Alaska Natives are considered hard to count as well, but what exactly is hard to count? This is a definition from the Census Bureau, and it says that hard to count populations are those for whom a real or perceived barrier exists to full and representative inclusion in the data collection process. Some examples of commonly HTC populations include people experiencing homelessness, historically marginalized groups, and nomadic peoples, just to name a few. On this next slide, you can see here is a nice Venn diagram that shows the different ways in which people and households are hard to count. So starting at the top, and we'll work our way clockwise, the first is the hard to locate. This would be household units that are not in our frame or persons wanting to remain hidden, so people in remote locations, for example. Next, the hard to contact. Highly mobile people experiencing homelessness, people experiencing homelessness, physical access barriers such as gated communities. At the bottom, you have hard to persuade, suspicious of the government, low levels of civic engagement, and then finally, hard to interview, participation hindered by language barriers, low literacy, or lack of internet access. As you can see right here, this is a hard to count map that the Census Bureau provides. As you can see at the top, they pointed to Civic, where they began enumeration just this past week, actually yesterday, on the 21st. And below is a map, or is the link to the map where you can see this. I won't open it now just because it'll take too long to load, but as you can see in here in the different colored areas, it shows, and this does not represent that, but they have a way to show not only the boundaries of existing reservations and other tracts of Indian country, but it also shows the different states and counties where it was considered hard to count, where the different levels of respondentness to the last census. And you can follow this link here. I'm just going to leave it up for another second so you can see. This is where you'd want to go to be able to tell if your area is considered a hard to count area, or if the counties around you, surrounding area, were considered hard to count as well. So finally, here's a list of the hard to count within our already hard to count population. And the list as follows. So first you have youth ages 0 to 5, followed by college students, homeless and transient people, veterans, elders, those living with disabilities, American Indians living in an off-reservation area, and finally incarcerated American Indians. So let's start with the first group, youth, ages 0 to 5. Examples of undercounted youth are children in lower-income households, children in shared custody situations who live some of the week in one household and the rest of the week in a different one, a child in a large multi-generational household, or that includes extended or multiple families. So how do we reach these 0 to 5? Well, obviously we can't just simply, tell them, hey, you got to fill out your census form. Obviously they're well too young to do that. So we need to talk to the parents or guardians of these children. We need to be sure that they know to include them in their household counts, and to ensure that if children are splitting time between different households, they are only counted in one. The rule of thumb is basically where do you sleep most of the time. It's known as the residency. Yes, residency. Sorry, I was double checking. The residency. Next slide, you have college students. So college students are miscounted as they often are living away from their homes or their parents' homes as they attend school. So if a student is living at their parents' home while attending school, they are to be counted at that home. If they're living where their school is located, either in on-campus housing or off-campus housing, they're to be counted there. When living away from their home, it is up to the student to fill out the census form and not their parents. So how do we reach them? Again, the parents will be the key, as students tend to assume their parents will be taking care of them in writing the census. As I just said, for those living away from home, it does fall on the student. Now, if a student is living in an on-campus housing, the university administration will designate staff, usually a resident advisor, to count all students. If they're living in an off-campus housing, not related to any university housing, it is up to the student to fill out the census form. Please be sure to educate the students on their role in the 2020 census, especially as a lot of these students are obviously probably maybe just voting for the first time as well. It's a great way to get them excited for the coming election. Next, we have homeless and transient. So people experiencing homelessness or who are living in between homes are difficult to count for obvious reasons. They don't have a set address or home that they would consider their own. The Census Bureau will devote 3 days to counting people who are experiencing homelessness across the country. They will ensure that people aren't counted more than once. As you can see on the dates here, starting on March 30th of this year, they'll be counting people who are in shelters. On the 31st, they'll be counting people who at soup kitchens and mobile food vans. And finally, on April 1st, which is Census Day, they'll be counting people in non-sheltered outdoor locations such as tent encampments and on the streets. So how do we reach them? Well, we have to be sure that your local census offices are aware of where homeless people populate in your area. We all know or have seen where homeless people live or take shelter. Be sure that your local homeless service providers are aware of the dates listed to prepare for enumeration. Next, we have veterans. While previous censuses asked a veteran question, this is the second straight census that there will be no veteran question included. The American Community Survey, which is a yearly survey form from the Census Bureau, does not ask veteran-related questions. And just to be clear, if you previously took or participated in the American Community Survey, you still need to do the 2020 census. It doesn't matter if you've done it 5 years in a row. The census is something different from the American Community Survey. According to the 2010 census, it is estimated that over 150,000 veterans identified as American Indian or Alaska Native alone. Failure to be counted will affect the much-needed resources of veterans, such as such as health benefits and housing programs. So how do we reach them? Again, we know or at least have an idea of veterans in our community, and we must be sure that we do not fail to fill in, that they do not fail to fill in the census form. These men and women have given so much, so we need to ensure that they have the needed resources. I think we all know or have neighbors who are veterans, and we just want to make sure that they take part in this census so that they are able to have those benefits, like I said. Next, we have elders. Native elders are considered to be the wisdom keepers and are held in the highest regard. Language and cultural barriers severely restrict Native elders from completing the census form. Elders also may not be living in their homes at the time of census due to hospitalization or seeking treatment at a hospice or nursing facility. So how do we reach them? The elderly, especially those who are living alone, need to be checked to ensure that they are ready for the census. If they have a language or other barriers then we need to ensure that they have the proper assistance to complete the census. Going back to the residency rule, as I mentioned, elders could potentially be in the hospital, or, be seeking help at a nursing facility or someplace that is not their traditional home, but they might be there on April 1st, which is when Census Day is when they want to be counted. In those scenarios, they need to be counted in the place where they sleep or where they spend the majority of their time. I attached for our resources a guide from the Census Bureau that gives different examples of where people might be on April 1st and how to best count yourselves. So I would ask you to please take a look at that. Next, we have those living with disabilities. According to the U.S. Census, 24% of American Indians and Alaska Natives have a disability compared to 90% of the general population. According to the National Council of Disability, barriers exist such as geographic isolation from state or local district rehabilitation services and healthcare, and there's limited employment options. Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 does require all federal agencies, including the Census Bureau, to make their electronic and information technology accessible to all people with disabilities. So again, how do we reach them? Similar to the elderly, we need to ensure that those with a disability are ready for census. Whether it's a physical disability like blindness or a mental disability, the ARC, a census partner of ours that focuses on people living with disabilities, has these resources. We would encourage you to check out their website. It's www.arc.org/census for more information that is specific to folks living with disabilities. And I'm going to write that in the chat right now, just so everybody has it. I have it written right in front of me here. Bear with me 1 second. And again, this is a resource for those who are living with disabilities. Okay, so American Indians living in an off-reservation area. According to the 2010 census, roughly 71% of American Indians live in urban areas. Those living in rural areas may not be living on the reservations themselves, but right outside of the reservation or scattered in small communities far from their reservation or tribal home. It's important for those living off the reservation to get educated through their local urban Indian centers or through the Indian programs they use in their areas. So how do we reach them? With those living off the reservation, whether in a major urban area or in a small rural town, it is essential that they fill out the census form. In these cases, family is going to be the best way to inform them of the coming census and how to fill out the race question to ensure that they are counted as an American Indian or Alaskan Indian. Finally, we have incarcerated American Indians. Any incarcerated person, regardless of whether they live in or outside of the state where the prison is currently located, is counted at that facility. Juveniles housed in a detention facility are counted in the state where the facility is located as well. Depending on the facility, the prison or the prisoners are responsible for filling out the census form. In some states, they have passed laws requiring prisoners to be counted at their home addresses when drawing local legislative districts, but the Census Bureau will not assist in the calculation of those states, and those laws do not affect the federal congressional districts. So how do they reach it? As we said, whether it's the prison administrators or the prisoners themselves that are responsible for filling out the census form, they need to be informed of the proper way to fill out the census form. We would encourage you to reach out to your state's prison bureau to learn more about how they will be conducting the count for the 2020 census. So finally, the call to action here. As I said, we've gone over the many different groups that are considered hard to count within our already hard to count community. So what do we need to do? First and foremost, you need to educate your family, your friends, and your community about these hard to count groups. We need to make sure that whether it's a young child, a newborn baby, or the elderly veteran who lives down the street, that they are ready for census and that they participate in census. Second, you should definitely use the resources from us at NCAI as well as our partners to ensure accurate information and best practices on how to work with these different communities and how to prepare for census. Finally, we would encourage you to contact your tribal partner specialist and the U.S. Census Bureau to confirm information and ask any questions on how to receive and fill out the census form. I would point you to the shared document information. In addition to the one I already mentioned about different residency criteria, I also have some information on group quartering, which relates to prison populations as well as colleges, just how the Census Bureau is going to go about counting those areas, those particular group quarters as well. Also, as I mentioned, if for no other reason, you should reach out to your tribal partner specialist to make sure you have the proper name to fill out for your specific tribe that you identify as. We're not telling you how to do it or what name you need to put in, but you need to double check with your tribal partner specialist or the Census Bureau to ensure you're entering in the proper name so that you're not counted with a different group or tribe. And with that, I'm going to hit the end here. Here we go. We're on to questions. So folks, if you want to go ahead and write any questions you may have in the chat, there's a question section or just in the chat itself. We'll be happy to answer them or at least point you in the right direction, and we can obviously give you more answers from there. So I'll take a moment here to stop talking and let folks write out whatever questions they may have, and we can go from there. Okay, looks like we got a few questions here. First one is from Lindsay. It says, do you have the coloring pages for AIAN? I heard that there's an org that developed one, but haven't seen it. Coloring pages. I'm going to assume when you say coloring pages, you're referring to a children's book, and I apologize if I'm mistaken there. I have not seen one. Sandra, let me ask, have you ever seen anything like that?
I haven't seen any coloring pages for census, but we can do some research on that and find out where they are. Did they come from the Census Bureau in terms of the tribal partner specialists as part of the census hub of resources? Or do you know of the area that maybe someone had mentioned to you they were released? Because we can narrow it down that way. We have a lot of state partners that are developing products.
Not from the Census Bureau, I think.
Okay.
We'll be honest with you, Lindsay, neither one of us has come across that, but that's definitely something we'll keep an eye out for.
I know that the Census Bureau, like I had mentioned, put out, in the past we had done on a coalition call, we talked about some of the resources they had for teachers, and in one of those resources they had a coloring book for children, and that was part of their teacher toolkit. I will look through there, but then I'll also look specifically for Indigenous community resources. And Lindsay, we have your information here, and so we'll be able to email that out when we have it to this list.
Yes. Next question is from Daryl. What are good strategies to talk to people who plan to not take the census due to the historic misuse and distrust of the government? Daryl, that is a fantastic question. That is probably the number one reason that people don't want to take the census, not only in Indian country, but around the country, people just don't have a distrust of the government. To that, I would say this. If you don't trust the government, why would you trust them to allocate funds to you or trust them to, provide programming for you? So what I mean by that is that if you don't fill in the census, that means that somebody else who is not you will be making decisions, or will be making uninformed decisions about your community, the needs of that community, whether you need more education services, health services, veteran services, whatever they might be. You're letting somebody else do that for you. And then when, that next 10 years comes around and you say, well, you know what, we had this major issue with our education programs and no funding ever came our way. Well, if a lot of people are not participating in the census, the government is not going to know, and as stupid as it sounds, that sometimes they just go off the data because they don't have the resources or they don't take the time to really go and investigate, where resources are truly needed. It's going to rely on that census data. So to anyone who I would say you're running into that, and I'm sure you're not, Daryl, you're not the only person that's run into that, where folks are saying, I don't want to take the census because I don't trust the government to handle these funds. Well, I would just say that without proper input, without the input, basically taking the census and telling them I'm living in a household with 5 people, we're all native, or I'm living in a multi-generational household where I've got 10 people living in the house with me. That's 10 less people that get counted. That's 10 less people. And 10 might not seem a lot overall, but when you break it down into these communities, 10 people can be the difference between being in a larger funding pool or being in a smaller funding pool. I can give you an example that in Minnesota, for example, and this wasn't in a specific Indian country, it was just a town in Minnesota that basically was off by about, I want to say 3 or 4 people from about a level of 5,000. Because they didn't hit that threshold, they weren't able to get access to certain funding that they needed when it comes to roads. So it is really imperative that people, even if they don't have a trust of the government, that they still participate in this, because without that proper information, as you saw the undercount of nearly 5%, that's a huge difference, because 5% of Indian country, I think that's a lot of people. That's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people right there.
One thing I would mention, and this is really important as to why we chose our campaign and titled it the way that we did. So when we were working with folks across Indian country and we were looking at what people really wanted to focus on as it related to something like the decennial census, our people, our nations, our future is what came out of that. And that was, definitely a combination of voices across any country that said, our people need to be visible. And how do we utilize different tools to make that happen? Well, with the decennial census, that's one way we can ensure that visibility happens. So our people and making, the case of visibility. And then how does that play a role in the way our nations are being empowered, and empowered through the way in which congressional districts, we talked about that and how the census plays a role in that, and provides us power and opportunity, and how our nations are uplifted and able to be a part of this larger process, the government-to-government relationship. And then you look at our future, that tagline of our future. This is 10 years. Every 10 years. So how do we ensure that for the next 10 years, if these are the numbers that are going to count play a role in those resources for the next 10 years, then it's maybe working with our community to say, what does that look like for us? When we're planning strategically, maybe it's your plan of action, with your tribe, and you're looking at the next 5, 10, 15-year strategic plan of what that looks like in healthcare and education, maybe it's community development, environment, et cetera. That's part of it, because all of these numbers go into resources or developing resources that affect all those things. And so I think that's one way that we've really tried to make sure that our tribal partner specialists and our census coalition partners that are working within their own communities can think about the message, because it is challenging. There is a distrust, and we recognize that, and we want to make sure though that we're visible, and that we're powerful, and that we have the resources we need to continue to further empower and strengthen our tribal nations. And this is just one tool that we can use to do that.
I just real quick, as Sandra was speaking, I pulled up and put on the screen here the sort of the theme of Indian country counts for this 2020 census. This is the front of our toolkit. This is our people, our nations, our future. As she mentioned, you know, this is not just going to be something that is going to affect Indian country, you know, this year or next year. This is going to be a decade worth. So from 2020 to 2029 to 2030, people are going to be using this census data to inform so much, and it is imperative that everyone is counted, because the more people counted, the more resources that will be coming to Indian country, the more representation availability there will be there. I mean, just think about it. If a full tribe is fully counted, that is suddenly a massive voting population there, and that can be a swing depending on the state you live in, or even the county or just the local jurisdiction you're in. That could be the difference between, having somebody who's going to be supportive of Indian country or somebody who's going to ignore it. So it's definitely something to think about. And our next question we have here, what resources are available for swag? If the state does not have swag, the USCB is limited supplies for their AIN swag was supposed to arrive in January, yet swag is still not in. Slow responses from the U.S. Census Bureau, Travel Department Specialist. There is no local county, CCC, sorry, I was trying to think of what the acronym stood for, Complete Count Committee, either reached out to us. Well, that is a great question, Lindsay. So, Lindsay, we produce some swag of our own on our website, and I have the screen paused right now, but I'll pull up the page real quick for you. But, we're trying to get that information out right now. We're actually in the process of sending out basically a packet to every single tribe in the country, not only federally registered, but state and local as well. And what we're planning to do is we're going to send in there sort of the swag that we have available, as well as information to get that out. So let me just show you, I'll pull up the screen right now. This is on our Indian Country Counts page. As you see here, we offer stickers, which is at the bottom, followed by the fans. And then on the top is probably our biggest swag that we really like, is the I am, and then the space is left blank for you to write in your tribal affiliation or whatever you'd like, and I count. These shirts are available through our pledge process, which is on our website. If you go to the pledge page, enter in your pledge, and then enter in information, we can then send you, obviously it'll give you a link so that you can fill out the size of your t-shirt, what you want to say on it, and then we are in the process of getting them out here. We're working as quickly as we can to get them out to everybody. I know that there are some people who may have applied and still haven't received it yet, but we're working on it as quickly as we can. So this page, I guess, it has information on the stickers and the t-shirts. AdPro is our vendor, and Carol Garcia is the contact there. And then for the fans, which is down here, that's a different company, that's Hand Fans Direct. And they, between the two of them, they produce the majority of our swag. And I would encourage you to check out this page, to go reach out to AdPro and Hand Fans Direct directly to be able to get that swag, and we can work from there. So that's a great question. Real quick, I'm going to pull up the census page real quick so everybody can see it. Out of the way.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Lindsay, can I add too? And this can happen offline, but if you wanted to send us an email directly to the census at ncai.org and let us know maybe how we can connect you to potentially some other local partners. I know not everybody has funding to order swag, and not everybody has access to doing that. And so if we can help better connect you with some of those sources, we'd be happy to do so in your area. There are a lot of states where there's some additional like private foundations and donors that are coming online to help with this process of getting information out amongst our hard to count communities. And so we'd love to help try and connect you that way as well. And so definitely shoot us an email. And the reason I'm saying shoot us an email is because I really don't want to, I want to make sure that we keep this conversation fresh and get you all the stuff that you need as quickly as we can. And then that way we can also maybe look at things from our end that we can send you right away. If we have to send like a targeted packet or something, we could do that. But definitely send us an email so that we can help better connect you to any resources that we may have that are close to you.
So real quick, I just wanted to show you the map that we had referenced before. So as you can see here, when you zoom in, if you're further out, you can't obviously see, but if you zoom in, you were able to see the tribal lands, which are all marked here. You can see all the different reservations just in a part of the Southwest here. And then on the right-hand side here, you can see the mail rate return as it refers to the last census. So the darker red, as you'll see, is in 60% and below. And then as it gets higher up, the color becomes lighter. And then finally, if it's kind of just straight white, that means it was above 73% and not considered a hard to count tract. So this is where I would encourage you to go. And then also, I click out this side here. When you go and you hover over a particular area, it'll tell you, what the return rate was. So, for example, in Mojave County, Arizona, in tract 9501, there was only a 69% return of mail for the 2010. In Carson County, New Mexico, in tract 9764, there was only a 45% return. So these are just kind of showing these areas are considered hard to count because of the low return rate. And there are obviously a number of reasons why these areas might be hard to count. It could have been just difficulty in getting the mail to these areas, land barriers, language barriers, you name it. Either way, that is what this map shows, so I hope you enjoy checking it out. Let's see if we have another question. We're just busy responding back to that. So it looks like we are, we still have about 20 minutes left, but I wanted to see if there's anybody who has any more questions, any more comments, wants to know more about really anything. As I said, we've had previous webinars on the census form, and we mentioned it during the presentation about what to expect, or at least just a quick overview of that, but obviously if anybody has any more questions on that. I would just remind folks that this year the census is going to be available online. Everyone will be receiving either through the mail or in person information inviting them to take, like a postcard inviting them to take the census, and on that information it does have a code that you can use to put online to go to the census website to be able to enter that code that will be specific to your household or your address, and then from there you'll be able to enter in that information.
Well, not seeing any other questions. I know everybody has been working really hard. I know we have, of course, our first enumeration. There was a lot of coverage on that, going out yesterday. That's really important, but we want to keep the momentum. That's really the key in all of this, is to keep the momentum and to support one another in this process. So one of the things that we really want to encourage everybody to do is what you're doing today. Get on a call. If you know of somebody that's going to do the work in their community, and they just don't have necessarily all access to resources or things, please let us know. Let us be aware of those things so that we can help be a good liaison and hopefully reach out to some of our other partners. We don't only work, obviously, with our priority is the American Indian and Alaska Native community, but we also work with a lot of our other partners in a community to ensure that we're all kind of working together to make this happen, and sometimes they are able to come up with resources that assist our community. So that's really important to us, to make sure that we're keeping those open lines of communication. I first and foremost want to thank Matt Johnson for providing all the information and resources today. You know, Matt is constantly researching and scouring news sources, but also, you know, we're every day we note that there are updated, you know, pieces of information about the census as it relates to, you know, whether it's resources or how we're getting kind of the count out to folks, whether it be continued conversations about, you know, the data tables that come in the back end, and we have a wonderful team here with our PRC team that's going to help with that. So we're constantly trying to just make sure that we have all the information for you.
Sorry, Sandra, don't mean to cut you off. I just want to show one more thing because you were talking about resources, and I realized my proudest achievement so far here on our ICC website, the Indian Country Council website, we have an interactive map here. So if you go to the resources page and click on the map, it brings you to this page here. You click on any state in the Union, even DC, you'll be taken to the resource, basically the best resource we could find for your particular state on census. So Alaska has a great one, so I'll click on them to start. If you click on Alaska, it takes you to Alaska Count. It has tons of information specific to the state on, you know, how to be ready for census and what to do. So I would encourage everyone to please go and check out this map to find out more information. And if you know, let's say you go and you click on your state and you're like, you know what, this isn't the best resource, email us at census@ncai.org. We'll be happy to update this. As I said, I did my best to try and find the best possible resource for each state, but I know I can always improve. So please, if you see anything on there, if you click on your state and you see something that, you know, oh, I wish this was on there as well, or something like that, please let me know and I'll be happy to have it. So sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Sandra, just wanted to share that real quick.
It's an excellent resource, and I know that there's a lot of maps out there for the census, and so I would encourage you to look at all the interactive maps, you know, make sure, you know, to reach out to folks. And again, as Matt mentioned, our CCCs are coming online still, our census count coalitions that are local. And so we're constantly trying to update our list here at NCAI to make sure we have a person. I don't know about you, but I really like being able to connect to a person and an individual in a community, because I think that just creates a stronger relationship as it relates to the work that we do. So we really want to thank everyone for all the work that they're doing, as I said before, in community, and definitely taking the time to join us today. Don't forget to fill out, we will have a form that comes out to you that we would like to get some feedback on. And then in addition, we're working on getting all of our webinars and recordings out to our coalition partners from our meetings, but also our webinars that we've done recently. We have to do some editing to some of our timing on those, and then we'll get those up on the page. So that you can even share those with any other colleagues or folks that are interested. We also want to make sure, in keeping consistent with this communication loop, that we will be having some upcoming calls and webinars, and I'm going to read those off now. But of course, we'll have those in our broadcast, our civic engagement broadcast, and we'll make sure to get them out to our listserv. We'll be having our next monthly Native Vote Coordinator call. So if you're a Native Vote Coordinator in your community, or maybe you're doing both census and Native Vote, or you're just interested in being on the call, since both are, of course, campaigns are really overlapping at this time. Our next call will be Wednesday the 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll send out an invite later from after this call, but then also it'll be in our next series of broadcasts. We'll put out some information about our future calls. And then also join us for our February calls and webinars. Those will take place on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're trying to keep those pretty standard. It seems to work better midweek versus a Monday or a Friday. We have our coalition call for Indian Country Counts. That's census work on February 5th. That's the next call. And then the next census webinar is on February 19th, followed by our next Native Vote call on February 26th. We won't have anything during the week of, basically it's the 10th through the 13th. That's our Executive Council winter session. It's going to be here in Washington, D.C. So we'll have our State of Indian Nations during that time. So if you're interested in that and you want to screen or do a streaming of the State of Indian Nations address by President Von Sharp, you can get on our NCAI page and look up some information on how to do maybe a watch party in your area if you can't be here with us on site or at winter session. And then if you just even want more information about the winter session, you can go on our NCAI.org webpage and get some information there.
Also, just if anybody is interested in coming, you know, we would love to have you out here in D.C. It's a great chance to really learn more about NCAI and the State of Indian Nations as well. So, you know, we're going to be having events on both census and native votes, so we would please ask you to go online and register. As I said, it's here in Washington, D.C., and it's a great chance to learn more about NCAI and obviously the State of Indian Nations.
And if you're not currently on the listserv, maybe you found out this information from a friend or someone else, you definitely can get added to our listserv. It's at census@ncai.org, so census@ncai.org, and we can make sure to add you. Or if you just know of somebody else that maybe should join this call, please definitely don't hesitate to have them email us, and we can add them as well. And then you'll also notice on here our Twitter handle and our website information on this slide. Without seeing any, do we have an additional question?
One last question.
Fantastic.
From Lindsay. This is there any PSA video or audio downloadable? So actually the Census Bureau just 2 weeks ago launched their paid media and outreach strategy. They put a lot of stuff on their YouTube page, which is available. So they already had one existing PSA specific for AIAN. Then they had a second one that came out that came out on the 14th, and then there's supposed to be a third one coming. So we're keeping an eye on that. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to pause.
Indian Country Counts page.
It's on the Indian Country Council. Thank you, Sandra.
So on our Indian Country Counts page, Matt, any of the resources that we get shared with us from the Census Bureau that relates to our American Indian Alaska Native population, we're putting those up on our resource page, and the PSAs are on there. So you can actually, the first PSA, as he mentioned, there's going to be 3 in total. We have that there, but as he had mentioned, they have a digital hub that they just launched that has not only those PSAs, but they have some additional poster materials that they have launched as it relates to AIAN community. And then we just contracted from NCAI. We are working with Native Public Media for radio ads and PSAs that are going into our urban organizations. So that would be like our IHS clinics and other places that we can put on monitors and different things like that. And those will be running from January through March. So those will be starting in Alaska with Native Public Media there, and then they'll be coming down through the rest of Indian Country as we move an inch closer to April. So we have those. I'll reach out to our rest of our communications team and see if any of those are downloadable that we can share from our specific ads that we did with Native Public Media. But also I would encourage, as Matt mentioned, please go to that Census Digital Hub. G&G Advertising with Michael Gray. G&G Advertising is who did the campaign for our American Indian Alaska Native community. And so when you go to that site and you look at their press release as it relates to the social media products, G&G Advertising is who you'll want to reach out to if you want to get some additional information about their deliverables.
So just real quick, as you can see on this page here, this is the first ad that we put on the website. It came out, I want to say, early or late, either late December or early January. So this is what's on the page right now. I won't play it just because even though it's only 30 seconds. And then the second one that came out, in all the rush, I neglected to actually put it up on the site as well, but I'm going to put it up right after this one right now. It's called According to Us. This is on the Census YouTube page. back here. This is a lot of the different ones that they released just this last week. Many different demographic groups, including AIAN. They also have some information on Pacific Bay and the work that they did. They have a few press releases, news conferences that they did as it relates to that as well. So that's what we just wanted to point you to. Definitely some great ways to get those information. And if you reach out to the census, I would say they're pretty good at getting back to you. I know I reached out to them about something related to one of their ads, and they said that, basically as long as you're a trusted partner, and then obviously anything that you were to download or have access to in terms of changing up or editable content, you just have to clear through Census first to use. But otherwise, it seems like it's a pretty straightforward process. So we just encourage folks to please take a look on our resources page just for more information on that. And obviously the U.S. Census Bureau YouTube page has a lot of that information, including that press conference on announcing their paid media strategy as well. So unless anybody has any other questions or anything like that, I think we'll let you guys go about 10 minutes early, so you have 10 minutes back in your day. I just want to again thank everybody so much for joining us today. I hope that you got some new information from this, and if you have any questions or maybe you want to know something more, please feel free to reach out to us at the email we provided at census@ncai.org. And just thank you guys so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey folks, sorry, I saw that somebody Lindsay had a question about real quick, if they don't have internet access. That unfortunately, if the tribe or school does not have internet access, they can't access it. That is true that they don't. If they don't have internet access, that is going to be a difficulty to reach out with. But we do have.
They will be doing, so keep in mind in the timeline of the census, they'll be doing several phases. So you'll have, they did print, and part of that press release that came out as it related to the products, they did print forms. So they recognize that not everyone is going to be able to do the internet, right? That would be great to do online for some communities that have access and can go to a library or they can go to a communal space and do that. But they also recognize that that's not always feasible for everybody. So there will be forms that are provided via mail to community. They are printing forms. The question was asked during that press conference is, do they feel that there's a strong enough budget if there's a need for more forms? And they do believe that they've not only printed enough forms to go out, but that they believe that there's enough in the budget to increase that if needed. So they are planning to still do, and I know that was someone else's question about paper forms, they are still planning to do that as part of their phase of their census operation in trying to get the count. So when you look at the timeline of how this is going to unfold, you're going to see that there's going to be that first pass, that self response, and then there's going to be all those phases of follow-up. And that's why it's really important. One of the things that I wanted to mention really quickly, and I know we might have lost, half of the people on the call, but I think it's really important that we mention this based on your question, is that one of the reasons that it's really important in the follow-up to have those trusted messengers coming to the doors is because during the follow-up is going to be where we actually deploy folks to come door to door. And really it's more comfortable if it's someone in community that's coming door to door to sit down and do that census with folks. And so I think that's really important, that if you know of people that have applied for the census positions, we recognize that not everyone's getting hired on quickly, that this is a process, but they will be reaching out to folks that have applied, and people will be onboarded at different times. But keep in mind, a lot of that is for when we need people to go door to door. It's important to have hopefully trusted messengers in community that are doing that work. So I would encourage you, if you're a CCC or if you're a census liaison to encourage folks to apply still in community to do that work. But second, I would also mention, that there are going to be different phases to this, and so don't fret if you don't have that internet access. The other thing I would mention is keep in contact with us and your tribal partner specialist throughout this process. We're trying to get the information out about filling out the census and ways to do it, and all the information that we're learning and resources that we're sharing. But also it's important for us in real time to be have a finger on the pulse of what's actually happening in community. So if you're recognizing some of these things that maybe we're not able to get mobile assistance centers in your community, here's what we're lacking. Those are some of the things that we can help push the communication and messaging back to our constituents as well, especially as it relates to specific communities. I mean, that's our work and that's our job to help do that.
Thank you for that last question. I guess now we'll officially sign off, but I thank everybody for joining us. We hope you have a great day, and we look forward to working with you soon.